Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. Thanks sponsors, Topps Panini, Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins and Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. A pre-tribute to Mark Dehem, my conversation with Jim, a wide-ranging conversation. We didn't just talk about Mark, who has just been diagnosed with liver cancer and pancreatic cancer, but I've known these guys since they were teenagers, 50 years. We go way back, and it's a big shock, but maybe the hobby community can step in. You'll hear about some efforts that have already been made, but two good guys, two brothers. We should all be praying for Mark. Tough diagnosis, tough situation. But anyway, here's the conversation. What's Mark's situation now so that listeners can know and be praying for him as well as maybe supporting in some way? If you could just lay it out there, because he's got a bad diagnosis. I've had friends.
He's battling both pancreatic and liver cancer at this time. He's very lethargic right now, sleeping a lot. We're trying to figure out why that is happening. They're going to try changing some of the medicine to see if they can get a little better response out of him, because he's trying to get to do some rehab to get strong enough so he can get back into fighting it. Maybe do the chemo again, because he hasn't had chemo in a while now. What happened was last October, our brother Gary died of pancreatic and liver cancer. And then about 10 days before Christmas, Mark went to urgent care, just in enormous pain, he said. And he wasn't sure what was happening. They did an MRI and CAT scans, and they found the liver mass first. So he's fighting. He was out and about Saturday the 13th.
I saw that on the Mickey Lolich YouTube video where y'all had a tribute show to Mark. And at the very end of the video, because there's a lot about Mickey Lolich, who is, by all accounts, an awesome guy.
Yes, he is.
At the very end, you're wheeling Mark through there. But the whole show, I think, was for benefit of Mark.
Right. The players were put together by Lance Parrish. Jack Morris flew in from out of town. Larry Herndon flew in from out of town. The other guys are pretty much local, but they all did it on their own. And any autographs that were sold, the money went to Mark, because he has coverage, but the expenses are just so outrageous, even beyond the medical care.
Have you guys known these Tigers for 40 years?
Yeah, I guess pretty close. We started to get to know these guys. I've always been more on the card end of the deal, but we did move from doing everything sports cards to, for a while, where we did just Detroit Tigers.
I remember that. I remember seeing you at the Nationals, and your table presentation evolved over the years.
We were focusing on the Tigers very much. Mark had always been interested in autographs, but it changed, I want to say in the late 70s to maybe early 80s, where he really started to get involved. We had a couple of guys prior to that. I think we had Jim Northrup and Dick Raditz. They would show up at a little card show. Bob Wimmer used to have one at his church, St. Martha's, which was a very popular show for a long time. And we'd have those guys show up, signing at the table. In the beginning, we did it for free, no charge for the autographs. Then in 1981, we did a great big show. We did a 68 Tiger reunion. And I think there was 8 or 9 guys that came in, along with Charlie Gehringer. And that was done with me and Mark, Charlie Mandel, Ed Budnick, and Bob Wimmer. We put that on together and selling autographs. After that, Mark started bringing guys in and signing at shows, doing appearances. And then it really took off when Gibraltar opened up. Mark got hired in there. He would do the shows, but he was in charge of bringing in the signers. It became a lot of Detroit guys, but he brought in guys from all over the country. Then he was the player rep for the Tigers. If you were to call the Tigers and say, I wanted to see so-and-so for doing a deal, they would give you Mark's name to make the connection with that Tiger. Then he became the president of the Detroit Tiger alumni, the first guy that wasn't a player to be the president of that.
Jim, people are listening and they're thinking, how could I get that gig? But the problem is that you had to be there. Mark was there. He paid his dues. Both you guys did. You were straight shooters. You came through for the players, and the players know who to trust and who's trying to take advantage of them.
Exactly.
It's not an accident that in the hobby that my statement is that good guys can do really well in this hobby. Trustworthy guys that do a great job and go to bat for the players. And I know you and Mark did that.
Yeah, you got to treat them right, and then also let them know that people are just here. A lot of them are just collectors. They can't afford crazy amounts of money, and they'll work with you. And you're right, though. You have to be in the right place at the right time. Long time we've been in the hobby. Mark got his start. He made his best move when he was able to make a connection with Willie Horton. And then he was the representative for Willie Horton. And it just moved on from there, where he did so many different players that he would set them up for dinners, banquets, all kinds of things where they would be guest speakers. It turned into a pretty darn cool thing.
I met you guys when you were teenagers, and you were always enterprising and in the hobby, but then it evolved in this over time. All the names you're mentioning from Detroit, those were some of the great years of my experience in the hobby. Not the Detroit Mafia. There were some really intense personalities there.
Oh, yeah.
Who really loved the hobby, but were characters for sure.
Absolutely. And I think we met for the first time at one of Charlie Brooks'
Probably it is
one of his shows.
The show in
Yeah.
Facebook. Yeah.
In the back room of that crazy store is,
Yeah.
or one of his local ones. But yeah, our dad used to drive us around because I couldn't drive when we started. And I'm sure you remember our dad. He was always there. We started collecting in '68, the year of the Tiger, because there was 5 boys in our family, and all of us had paper routes at one time. When we were that little, 2 of our older brothers had one, and Mark helped my brother Dave, and I helped Paul. And at the end of the week, we got $1, and that was it. You could buy baseball cards.
Buy as many as you can. Of course, cards were a nickel
back.
But I remember meeting you guys probably about 1975.
I think that was it.
You were some of the younger guys, but you held your own, that's for sure. And but like I said, there were some real personalities there that were.
Well, Charlie Brooks, just running the store, was one of those great personalities of the hobby. I know a lot of people didn't like him.
I don't think he ran the store. I think the store ran itself.
Kinda.
He wasn't a detail guy.
No, that was his biggest problem. He could never follow through on anything.
But he had great ideas, and he was way ahead of his time on some things. It was so much fun to go up there, but he just had an easygoing philosophy. But yeah, he rubbed some people the wrong way because when people were zigging, he'd zag.
Exactly. And he was the first guy to really do the thing with the superstars.
Right.
A lot of people, if cards were 10 cents, they were all 10 cents.
Yeah.
But he was the first guy to start. Aaron, Mays, Clementi, those guys are more.
The Gowdy reprints that he did, he really knew that people, even a reprint of what was at that time becoming more expensive cards, would make it accessible. The advanced collectors didn't really like that.
No, not at all. But then there were some great advanced collectors coming in at that time.
Yeah.
Wimmer and Budnick. You got to remember Frank Nagy was coming in there.
I know. I went over to Nagy's house. That was a real highlight. I always thought you guys were more influenced by Ed Budnick because he was a national dealer, and he had that interesting blend of memorabilia and cards, but probably more memorabilia. And I felt like you guys were pulled in that direction. And he was a great guy.
And we did do a lot of memorabilia, but we did do the cards as well. We were pretty heavy in the cards in the beginning. Charlie Brooks, when the truck would come in with the cases from Topps, you get 100 cases at a time. We'd sort for them. You got a quarter of whatever you sorted. So we would take 4 cases. In 1975.
That'd be a pretty good deal.
It was a great deal.
Much at that time, but oh my goodness.
But the case at that time was $45.80 for a 1975 case. So just under $2 a box. So he was giving you about $12 to sort 9,000 cards for him. We did about 250 sets for him in 1975 alone. Sold 1,000 over the course of 1975.
Is that why you're wearing glasses now?
Yes.
He was ahead of his time in a lot of respects. And Detroit was one of the epicenters of the hobby in the 70s for sure. there were just so many advanced collectors there and so much energy in the collecting community. And even the local shows there were worth it for me to come up from Bowling Green. It was a great foundational experience for me. Within the metropolitan area of Detroit, you had some of the great collections, Dick Royce, Jay Barry, some of these
Yep.
old timers.
John Ramirez is still here.
John
Yeah.
Ramirez, yeah, and Nagy. Those guys were inspiration for me because you can't achieve what you can't perceive or see. And you could see these guys had accumulated and had the knowledge along with the cards, because in those days you just had to explore. But Nagy had
Right.
everything. John Ramirez was collecting everything in every color, every variation. And Dick Royce was walking around with his oxygen, and it just was amazing. So I couldn't have picked a better place. And so that's how I got to know you guys. And you guys had your own lane, and I think that's really important. And you evolved it like as you saw the opportunities.
And we had a lot of fun over the years. I did tell a lot of people, I don't know if you recall, it was one of the Dearborn Civic Center shows that Bob had on the side.
Exactly.
And we bought you out. Do you remember that? The price
Well,
was
I remember.
$2,500 or something.
Wow. I have a number of memories of that Dearborn show that Bob set up. It was very casual. You have that experience. My main experience, and this probably would have happened right before that, is I had some cards stolen from me, palmed off my table at that show. I know exactly where my table was. I'm pretty sure who did it and who was distracting while they palmed off the cards. And so
Uh-huh.
I still have great memories of that show, but maybe that caused me to be a little more, I think, if they're going to get stolen, I might as well sell them. But I had no tablecloth, no showcases. They were just sitting out there. So shame on me. And like most guys at that time, everything on my table were duplicates. So I could
Hmm.
sell them, I could trade them. I really was trying to sell cards to get more money to buy other cards that I needed to finish my sets.
That's all anybody wanted to do.
So where'd you get the money? Do you get it from your dad or your brothers or?
Oh, no. We just hustled with our paper routes
Okay, wow.
and buying and selling cards. We were buying and selling. At the end of the year, using our paper route money, we would buy all the cards from the kids in the neighborhood so they could go buy football.
Okay.
We'd give them $1 or $2 and take all their cards.
Did you have a 50-50 split with your brother? Jointly own the cards and share the
Yes,
profits?
everything was 50-50 together. So
It still is? That's impressive.
well, his autograph part is separate now. While we do have some autographs together, and most of the old trading cards we had are mine now. We still work together.
Yeah.
There's no problems.
You're doing some different things. What's the secret for people that are listening to this that you guys started young and you kept at it? A lot of people took a 20-year break. I don't remember that you guys did. I keep seeing you at the Nationals. So what's the secret
Yeah.
there? You pace yourself, or the fact that you were brothers, you had each other to encourage each other? What's the secret there for having a long, enjoyable, continuous hobby ride?
Well, you said one of the things, you have the others back on the interest, but the passion, I can still look at the same cards over and over again. We enjoyed the hobby so much, and we love baseball so much.
Yeah, but Mark is not cards as much. Has he gotten more into the player relationship representation stuff now?
Yes, but he does still like to get photos signed and cards signed. It's a pretty good area to have. There's a lot of people out there that collect cards trying to get the whole set signed. It's amazing how many people you meet after a while. They want to get all 726 1978 top signed. And if you get a team card, you try to get the manager, or at least you get one player on there. So it's pretty darn cool.
Or get all the 68 Tigers or all the 84
Exactly.
Tigers, things like that. So again, Detroit, that's what guys did back in the day. It was easy to get a complete set of the cards, not so easy to get a complete set of the autographs. But if you're in a major
Right.
league town, an old school Detroit or Chicago, there were a lot of them like that in Chicago because they had both leagues there. Getting the autograph sets, I started working on that, and then I got intercepted by the price guide stuff. I just didn't have time for it. But that is a colossal challenge.
It is. And our old buddy Pat Quinn, I
Yeah.
still think he needs 3 cards for his 51 Bowman sets signed. It's a passion.
People don't realize these iconic guys that have been in the hobby for a long time, that are well-known names, that have had auctions and all this stuff. Quinn, being an example, were super passionate collectors from the start and very knowledgeable about the cards. Don Steinbach, Bill Mastro was like that too, thinking of Chicago guys. They were knowledgeable. They weren't like lucky. They really studied it.
Right. And we had a lot of fun along the way too. Pat Quinn was another one that was always good to us. He's always been a nice guy.
He's
No longer
sarcastically funny. He just he's always cutting somebody, but I think it's in good fun.
It is good fun because he always called me and Mark the good cop, bad cop, because we always like to tease him. Going back to our Detroit thing, we just had so much going on. And like with Charlie Brooks's store, the people don't believe it when I try to tell them the things that were in that store. It was just phenomenal.
The things that were hidden, the things that Charlie didn't even know were there, that were like under 3 boxes, that would be great stuff because he was not organized.
Not one bit. I can remember seeing flats of the bazooka boxes, and he would just have cases of them, of each guy.
But the problem was, I don't know if he thought about it. I'm not an accountant, but the cost basis, what he was into those things for, was peanuts. Was just nothing, and that's why he didn't really appreciate it. And when the hobby started getting stronger and things started going for more, it just wasn't what he was into. He had great stuff, but he didn't market it.
I don't know if you recall, he always had his buddy Mike Schechter there.
Exactly.
MSA.
I knew Mike, and he was...
Charlie had more MSA stuff than anybody around. It was incredible.
But it wasn't respected in those days.
No.
But if you'd have waited a little while, it was great stuff. Now, I didn't know that it'd be great stuff either. I wasn't picking him clean. I still was doing Tops and Bowman and filling out my sets before I got heavy into the price guide stuff. But I studied all the things, but there was not enough demand. The other problem he had is he had too much quantity. What he did have, he had too much of, and so it's overwhelming. If he'd have sold a set or two, it just would be a drop in the bucket.
I try to explain to people this stuff in the basement, the hostess panels.
They were flat, and that was before grading. They were all in good shape, although they would need to be cut. It wasn't pallets, but it was just stacks.
And I know me and Mark moved those down the basement. That was our job for some trade we made.
What a great
we moved 100,000 panels down the basement.
What do you remember about Charlie Conlon and the 75?
Oh my gosh, Charlie Conlon.
He was in his car going all around the state, I think, picking up the 75.
He would buy anything pre-1940 and 1975 minis. If he could find something unusual, he would buy it. Like some of the obscure Tops issues. I know he wanted some of the ones. We had the Tops stand-ups with the black,
the
cutout
issue stand-ups,
Yes. And he wanted them bad.
No, he had an eye.
But he wanted to pay ridiculously low prices.
But he would use his 75 Tops minis as currency. He would trade you for that. And he never let you know how many he had. But he's big into the Glendales and Dandies and things like that. He had a great eye, but he was tight.
Like you said, nobody knows how many minis he had. But it was an incredible amount.
Well, he'd bring them out one case at a time. He just was smart about that. If he'd have brought too many out at the same time, it would have flooded the market.
And he was lucky that Michigan was one of the few markets that got him. At the end of the season, he was able to clean them up. I know Charlie Brooks got a lot in the returns. They were sent to his store. I don't know if Charlie Conlon bought all of those and then maybe found more.
Charlie Conlon loved making good deals. Very scrupulous. But Charlie Brooks was, it's close enough. Let's do it. He loved making deals. He just didn't sweat the details, and that was fun.
Not one bit.
Every time I came up there, it was an adventure. You never knew what you were going to be going back with.
I remember how horrified I was. I think it was Christmas time, 1976. He decided he was going to put a tree in the window of the store. But on the tree, he had 59 Mays, Aaron, Clemente K-lines that he had punched holes in and put strings through them and hung them up. because he had 400 to 500 of each that he had just gotten from Gelman in New York. But I was horrified, even one of them that he would punch a hole in.
It would be a felony today.
Absolutely.
Hey, but that's the attitude he had. He had the attitude that you could have in those days, that cards are easy come, easy go. That's not the case anymore. That's the way it was in those days. That I'll get some more. It was easy to buy, easy to get cards. He had a steady stream, I'm sure, of walk-ins coming into his store.